Story 1: The Face in the Smoke. I lived in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by miles of dense woods, towering trees, and endless fields of corn and wheat. My nearest neighbor was over a mile away, and nighttime brought a kind of quiet that was almost unsettling. The only sounds were the faint rustling of leaves in the wind, and the occasional calls of night creatures echoing through the still air. It was a solitude I had grown to appreciate, finding a kind of peace in the isolation. But that night the quiet felt different, charged, tense, as if the air itself was heavier. It was around midnight, and I had just finished a long, exhausting day of work. My house was silent, save for the ticking of the old clock on the wall, and the only light came from a dim lamp in the living room, casting soft shadows across the walls. Though tired, I felt restless, so I decided to step outside, onto the porch for a cigarette. I slid open the screen door, stepping into the cool night, feeling the gentle breeze that carried the earthy scent of the surrounding fields. The sky was dark, with only a sliver of the moon casting faint shadows on the landscape. The night was so still that every sound stood out sharply. The chirping of crickets filled the silence, their rhythmic song echoing across the empty fields. I took a cigarette from my pocket, lit it, and inhaled deeply, the tip glowing a warm red in the darkness. As I took another drag, I found myself staring out into the dark expanse of the fields, lost in thought. Then a strange feeling began to gnaw at the back of my mind, the sensation that I wasn't alone. I tried to brush it off, reasoning it was just nerves, but the feeling wouldn't go away. I was about halfway through the cigarette when something truly odd happened. As I exhaled a plume of smoke, it didn't dissipate like usual. Instead, it seemed to cling to something in the air, just inches from my face. I blinked, my breath catching as I watched the smoke take shape, curling around an unseen outline. Gradually, the smoke formed the unmistakable image of a face, just inches from mine. Hollow eyes stared back, empty, yet strangely alive. Its mouth was slightly open, as if it were trying to speak. Though no words came, the features were blurred, almost as if they were part of the smoke itself. I froze, unable to look away, as the face lingered there, too close, its empty gaze fixed on me. Suddenly fear gripped me, my heart beat thundering in my chest. I stumbled back, my cigarette slipping from my fingers and hitting the porch floor. The glowing ember quickly fizzled out, but I barely noticed. All I could think about was getting inside, anywhere that felt safe away from this thing. I spun around, rushing toward the door, nearly tripping in my panic. My hands fumbled with the handle, shaking as I finally managed to pull it open. I stumbled inside, slamming the door shut behind me, the sound echoing through the empty house. Leaning against the door, I tried to steady my breathing, my mind racing as I replayed what had just happened. Was it real, just some trick of the light? After a few moments, I forced myself to move. Unable to just stand there, I went through the house, checking every window and door, making sure each was locked tight. Every shadow seemed to hold a hidden threat. Every creak of the old house made my heart skip a beat. When I was sure the house was secure, I grabbed my phone and called the police, trying to explain what had happened, though my voice shook with fear. The dispatcher didn't ask too many questions, but assured me someone would come to check the area, just in case. A few minutes later, I saw the flash of red and blue lights outside. Two officers got out of the car, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. As they searched the property, after what felt like an eternity, one of the officers knocked on my door. He asked me a few questions and took down my statement. Just as he radioed his partner, I heard a voice crackling over the static. The other officer had found someone, a man lurking near the edge of the woods, hidden in the shadows. They led him to the car, his face obscured in darkness, his expression unreadable. But as they drove away, something about him felt off, like he had been waiting there. Watching that night, I couldn't shake the unease that lingered. The man was gone, but I felt no relief. And in the silence of my room, I could still see that smoke-formed face, those hollow eyes staring back at me, haunting me. I knew deep down it wasn't over. Whatever had appeared in the smoke that night might just return waiting, watching in the shadows. Story to the uninvited visitor. It was a cold, quiet evening, and my name is Eva. I live with my roommate, Sarah, in a small apartment on the edge of town. Sarah had gone out with friends, leaving me alone for the night. I didn't mind. I often enjoyed the peace after a long day at work. But that night something felt wrong. There was a strange stillness in the air, as if the silence was pressing in from all sides. Curled up on the couch with a blanket, I was watching TV. The apartment was dimly lit, with the glow from the screen casting soft shadows across the room. Every now and then, I'd glance at my phone, hoping to see a message from Sarah, saying she'd be home soon. But the phone remained silent. The sounds of the outside world seemed to fade, leaving only the ticking of the clock and the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I tried to brush off my growing unease, telling myself it was just my imagination. But as the hours passed, the feeling only grew stronger. I couldn't focus on the TV anymore. Every little noise seemed magnified. Then out of nowhere, I heard a faint scratching sound from the front door. I froze, my heart pounding, as I tried to convince myself it was nothing. But the scratching continued, growing louder and more insistent. Someone or something was trying to get in. Slowly I rose from the couch, my hands shaking as I crept toward the door. My mind raced, wondering what I should do. Should I call the police, run? But before I could decide, the door burst open with a loud crash. I screamed, clapping a hand over my mouth to stifle the sound. A man stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the darkness outside. I couldn't make out his face, but I could see he was tall and broad-shouldered. He stood there for a moment, staring at me as if deciding what to do next. Panic surged through me and I darted for the kitchen, hoping to find something to defend myself. The man didn't move right away, giving me a few precious seconds to grab a knife from the counter. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped it. I crouched behind the kitchen counter, trying to stay quiet, listening as his footsteps creaked closer, echoing in the silent apartment. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't find me, hoping he'd just leave. But then the footsteps stopped and an eerie silence fell over the room. I was about to move when a loud crash echoed through the living room. I knew I had to act quickly, my heart hammering as I darted for the bedroom. I locked the door behind me, grabbing my phone and dialing 911. The operator's calm voice did little to ease my terror. As I whispered that there was a man in my apartment, She assured me the police were on their way. And finally I heard the distant wail of sirens. Minutes passed like hours. The man must have heard them too, as everything went quiet. Again, I didn't dare move, too afraid to open the door, until I heard the police knocking and calling out. When I unlocked the door, I felt a rush of relief, seeing the officer standing there. They searched the apartment, but the man was gone, leaving only the broken door as proof he'd been there that night. I couldn't shake the memory of his shadowy figure, standing in the doorway, the sound of his footsteps drawing closer. I knew he was gone, but the fear lingered, haunting me in the silence of my apartment. Even now, every creak and whisper of wind fills me with dread, knowing that safety is sometimes just an illusion. Story 3: The Locked Room. Growing up, a family had an old house on the outskirts of town. It was the kind of place that creaked and groaned with every gust of wind, and the floors always seemed to moan underfoot, even when no one was there. It was a 2-story faded, Victorian-style house, with a large attic that my parents had kept locked since we moved in. When I was young, I'd always asked my parents why the attic was off limits, but they would only exchange worried looks and tell me that it was dangerous and unstable. Years passed and curiosity about the attic faded, though every so often I'd feel drawn to it, catching glimpses of its door at the end of the hall, and wondering what lay beyond it. But life moved on, and soon enough, I moved out to start a life of my own, leaving the mysteries of the attic behind. Years later, after my parents passed, the house became mine. It felt surreal, returning to a place so steeped in childhood memories. Now, silent and empty, on the first night back I walked the house alone, feeling a strange sense of both nostalgia and unease. The old rooms were the same, filled with the same creaky furniture and dusty frames. And of course, the attic door was still there, locked and mysterious, standing at the end of the hallway as if waiting for me. That night, unable to resist the pull any longer, I decided I would finally see what was inside. I hunted through my parents' things, looking for the key, wondering if I'd even find it. Eventually tucked inside an old shoebox, buried in my mother's closet, I found it, a small, rusty key that looked as old as the house itself. My heart pounded as I held it, feeling a mix of excitement and dread. Key in hand, I made my way to the attic door, my footsteps echoing through the empty hall. The house felt different, almost as if it was holding its breath, waiting. I inserted the key into the lock, feeling resistance as I turned it, but finally, with a loud click, the lock gave way. The door creaked open, and a cold, stale breeze rushed out, carrying the scent of dust and something else, a faint metallic temps that made my stomach turn. I flicked on the flashlight I'd brought, shining it into the darkness beyond. The attic was larger than I'd expected, filled with old trunks, furniture draped in sheets, and shelves stacked with boxes. Shadows danced in the flashlight's beam, stretching and shifting as I moved deeper into the room. My footsteps stirred up dust, the particles swirling in the light, adding to the eerie atmosphere. As I moved deeper into the attic, I noticed something strange. A small table in the center of the room, with a single wooden chair. On the table was a dusty yellowed journal. I reached out, brushing the dust off the cover, revealing a name written in faded ink. Emily. The name struck a chord, though I couldn't recall why. I opened the journal, flipping through the brittle pages, filled with a delicate looping script. The entries were strange, filled with fragmented sentences and frantic sketches, like someone was trying to capture something beyond words. The whispers grow louder, one entry read. I hear them in the walls, calling me. As I read on, the entries became more disturbing. It's getting closer, another page warned. The ink smeared as if the writer's hand had shaken. It wants to come through. A chill ran down my spine, and I closed the journal. The silence of the attic pressing in on me. I was about to leave when I heard it. A faint, muffled whisper coming from the corner of the room. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I scanned the area with my flashlight, my heart racing, as I tried to convince myself it was just the winder, my imagination. But then the whisper came again, clearer this time, a low, drawn-out voice like someone calling from far away. It sounded almost familiar, as if it were echoing from a memory I couldn't quite grasp. Against my better judgment, I followed the sound, moving toward the far corner of the attic, where an old mirror stood propped against the wall. Its surface was cloudy, but as I approached, I could swear I saw movement within it, like shadows shifting behind the glass. I leaned in closer, my reflection staring back, distorted and warped by the dusty glass. For a moment everything was still, and then, just as I was about to pull away, something moved in the mirror, the face pale and gaunt with hollow eyes. From escaping, I leaned against the door, struggling to catch my breath, my mind racing with what I had seen that night. I lay awake, haunted by the memory of the face in the mirror, the sound of those whispers echoing in my mind. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, a trick of the light, but deep down, I knew the truth. Whatever was in the attic, it had been waiting, and though I had left the room, I felt it watching, lurking behind that locked door, waiting for the moment I might let it out again.